Hello everybody and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be going over game number 2 out of the 20 game challenge, and the game that we're going to be doing this time is Breakout. So this game is pretty similar to Pong, however the platform that the player moves is on the bottom and it moves left and right, and then you shoot a ball up or bounce a ball off of the platform and destroy the little bricks on top. So we'll be working on that game here and we'll go ahead and get started now. Step 1 is to create a game space with walls and a ceiling. So we'll go ahead and do that. This is going to be very similar to what we did in the previous game here. So we're going to create a square. We'll name it left wall. We're going to resize this, probably make it a little bit skinnier. Then take a look here. So we want to be back over here. So probably -8.4. Pretty close. -8.8. We'll go with, I think that's fine. I want it on the inside of the camera here. I don't want it on the outside like we did with the previous game. All right, and then, oops, and then we'll go ahead and we'll duplicate the wall. And this one we should be able to just move to 8.8. That'll be good there. And rename this one to right wall. Once we have the right wall here in place, we'll go ahead and we will duplicate this as well. And then we're going to set this one. We'll rotate this on the z-axis here by 90 degrees. Move it over here, and we'll scale this one up as well a little bit. And now this one, I don't want all the way all the way to the top. We want to have a little bit of stuff here above it. We're going to place like the score and stuff here above it. So I think this will be good. Maybe we'll move it down to here. I think that'll be all right for us. And then we'll just make this a little bit bigger here so it takes the whole space. And then we'll duplicate this one as well. And we'll move this to the bottom. This one I'm going to have off the screen. That way it'll just look like the ball's flying down, but once it leaves the space here, we can do something with it. And then I'll also rename these walls. This one will be top wall. This one will be bottom wall. And I'm going to create an empty and call this walls so I can move the walls in there to make the editor a little bit more organized here. And that is everything for the first step. Step 2 is to add a paddle that can be moved left and right via the player inputs. So this is going to be very similar to what we did in the last game, but instead of moving up and down, we're going to be moving left and right. So we'll go ahead here and we're going to create another square. We will scale this down here to make it look more like the paddle that we want, and probably make it a little bit bigger. I think paddle should be a little big, so we'll probably go 2.5 and 0.2 maybe, I think is good. And then we'll move this down to a good spot. This is probably decent here, so go ahead and put this at 0. And then -6 seems okay. So now we have the paddle here where we want it, and now we simply have to make it move. So we'll go ahead and to keep everything organized, we'll create a new folder here, call it scripts. And then we're going to create a C# script, call it player movement. And before we get started with writing anything on the script here, we're going to want to add a rigid body to our player, rigid body 2D. And then we'll go ahead and switch back over to the script. Now back in the script here, we're going to do very similar to what we did in the previous one. We're going to want to get a reference for our rigid body. So we'll go ahead and do a private rigid body 2D, and we'll call that rigid body, or RB for rigid body. And then we're going to need the velocity. So we're going to need left and right, how far we want to move in each direction. So we'll go ahead and do a private a vector2, and we'll call this first one here velocity left. Oops. And we'll do the same thing for velocity right. Now inside of the start method here, we're going to have to call rigid body, and we're going to set it equal to our rigid body 2D component here. And we'll also set the velocity left, and this is going to be equal to a new vector 2. And we'll want to type in X and Y positions here. So we want to be moving on the Y. So what we'll do, or on the X, so what we're going to do is we're going to be doing, we'll stick with 5F. I believe that's what we did on the previous one, and that was a decent speed. So we'll do that. And then for going to the right, it's actually going to be 5, and left is going to be -5. Now, once we have both of these set, we're going to want to come down here and create the actual method to move. So we'll go ahead and do a private void, and we'll call this one movement. And inside of here, this is where we'll do the input. So if the input dot get key, and we'll do key code dot, we'll probably stick with A and D. So A is going to be for moving left. And then we'll also want to do if input for S, and not S, we want that to be D, and that's going to be to move to the right. So then here we're going to go ahead and do RB move position, and then this is going to be set to our current position plus the velocity. So for A, we want this one to be the velocity left, and we're going to be calling times, and we'll do time dot fixed delta time, since we're going to be doing it in fixed update. And we can go ahead and copy this, paste it, and then this one we can simply change velocity left to velocity right, and that will be all right for here. And then the last thing that we want to do is we want to erase the update here, call fixed update. Oops. And inside fixed update, we're going to want to call movement. We'll go ahead and save that and jump back into our editor. Once we're back inside the editor here, we simply need to attach the player movement script to the square. We're going to go ahead and rename this to player, and then we'll click play and test it out. And our player sinks straight to the ground, so we'll want to go ahead and fix that. All right, so there's a couple of things that we'll want to adjust here. First, the player is actually too low. Player doesn't actually show up in our camera. You can see here it's a little bit too low. So we're going to want to move it up to around here probably. So we'll go ahead and put that here, and we'll change this to -4. I think that'll be good. And then the way we can make the player to not fall directly down is we can just simply change this gravity scale down to 0. and that should take care of that issue. So if we click Control S and we go into the game to play here, character no longer falls, and we can move left and right. So the next challenge here is to add a ball that's going to bounce off of the paddle, the walls, and the ceiling. This is going to be something similar to what we did in the first game, the Pong game. And we're going to do this in a little bit of a different way. I was doing some research, and I believe that I've found an easier way to make this change. So we'll go ahead and get that taken care of now. So back in the editor here, we're going to need to do a couple of things to start with. First thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add some colliders here. So on the player, we're going to go ahead and we'll start typing in collider. We're going to add the box collider 2D. And then on the ball here, we're going to also add the circle collider 2D. And while we're at it, we're going to change circle to ball so we can better remember what this is. And then we're going to need to go ahead and create a new script here. And we can call this ball movement. And then before we forget here, we'll go ahead and attach this to the ball. And we'll go ahead and open that up. So a couple of things before we start typing out the code here. What we're going to be doing in here is we're going to be using the add force. And this is how we're going to start the ball moving right away. And we're going to do this in the start method. And then for the collision, what we're going to do is we're going to be using vector3.reflect. So we're going to use this to make the ball bounce in a certain way here, off of the walls and off the player. This is going to take two things. We're going to need the indirection and the in normal, and they're kind of explained right here in the documentation. But the indirection is we're gonna use the magnitude of the ball when it goes through the on collision enter, and we're also going to use the in normal, and we're going to get the normal here by using this collision.getContact. So this is going to return the contact point here at the specified index, and we'll go over how to get the index as well a little bit. But if we click on contact point, we have the ability here to get the normal of the contact point. So that's what we're going to use for that. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started on typing that out. So back on the ball movement script here, we're going to need to start off with a couple of things. First off, we will get the reference to our rigid body. So we'll go ahead and do the rigid body 2D, and we can call that RB. And then we're going to need to get a reference that we'll use for the last velocity. So we'll go ahead and do a private and a vector3. And we'll call that one last velocity. And let's see here. And then next on the start method, we're going to go ahead and define our rigid body. Going to be our get component rigid body 2D. And here we'll also want to go ahead and do the add force to the rigid body. So we'll do rb.addForce. And here we're going to do a new vector2. And we're going to define how fast we want it to be, or how much force we want to apply. We'll start off with 250 and 250. I believe those should be decent. So now if we save this here and we go back into Unity, if we play the game, the ball should move. However, it shouldn't bounce off of any objects or any walls, which is perfect. So down here in update, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set last velocity, and we're going to set this to the velocity of the rigid body here. And then we're going to need to do a on collision enter. So we'll do on collision enter 2D. And this is where we're going to set the vector3 reflect and make the ball actually move. So what we'll need to do is we're going to need to set a variable here, and we can call it speed. And what we'll do is we'll set this to the last velocity and dot magnitude. And then next we're going to need to do a variable here. We could just call it like direction that the ball's going to be moving. And this is going to equal the vector3 dot reflect. And in here, this is where we'll need to input that last velocity. And we're going to normalize that. So dot normalized, a comma, and then we're going to need to do the collision dot get contact. And we want the first contact, so that's going to be a 0. And we're going to do dot normal, close up the parentheses. And the last thing that we need to do here is set the velocity again. So we're going to need to do rb dot velocity, and this is going to equal our direction times, and we're going to use math f dot max, and then here we're going to set this to speed, and we'll set it start off at 0f. If we ever want to change this, we can, and we'll go ahead and save this. And now back in the game here, if we load the game up and press play, the ball should start bouncing off of the objects. Perfect. So that's, you can see there's a little bit of an issue here. I'm not holding the movement, but the ball is still actually being, or the ball is forcing the player to move in a specific direction. It's adding force to it. So we'll go ahead and fix that as well. One thing that we can do to fix the player from moving like that is add or change from rigid body dynamic to kinematic in this situation. It'll work. And if we change that and play, now if the ball hits the player, it doesn't actually move the player on its own. I do think that we either need to slow the ball down or speed the player up, because we can't really keep up with the ball at this point. But we'll change that later. So back on the 20 Games Challenge website here, the next goal is to add a square game objects. So we'll add the bricks into the top of the game. And it does mention here that the original game had 8 rows of 16 bricks each. I don't think we'll use that many. So we'll go ahead and probably make quite a few less than that, just to show how to do it and how it works. And I will go ahead and jump back into the editor. So once we're inside the editor, to add the bricks, it's pretty easy. All we're going to do is go down here to 3D objects, sprites, and we'll make a square. And we'll rename this to brick. And then what we'll do is we will go ahead and move this over to where we want it. So maybe up in this area someplace. Then we'll go ahead and scale this up. So let's make it a little bit bigger. I think that's all right. And then make it a little bit skinnier here, so it's not too thick. I think that's okay. So I like to have cleaner numbers, I guess. So since this is close, I'm gonna do negative 7.45 or maybe 7.5. Let's actually go with negative 7. I think that looks better. I think that's a little bit better of an amount of space on the side there. And then this is really close, so we're just gonna go 2.5. And then for the scale, 1.85 I think is good, and 0.175 I think that's fine as well. So we'll go ahead and keep those numbers. And then one other thing that I want to do though is I do want to change the color. I think we'll have a couple different colors of bricks here. So for this one, let's go with red. So let's actually rename this and we'll call it red brick instead. And then to change the color, all we need to do is come down here. We'll create a new folder, call this materials. And then, call this materials. And then inside here, we'll right click and we will add a new material. And then all we have to do is we can click over here. Okay, I don't know why it wasn't showing up before, but we can click this little box here, and we'll change it to a red. It'll be a little bit of a darker red here, and then we can drag this. Well, actually, first let's rename it to red, and we can drag this onto the red brick. So for me, this red color is too dark. I don't think I like it. I want it to be a little bit brighter, kind of how it shows up over here. So you can see it's pretty dark. So I'm gonna do a couple of different things. First off, in the main camera, I'm gonna change the background color here. I think I'm gonna change it to black. I think that'll make everything look a little bit nicer for the game. And then back on the next thing that I'll do here is I'm going to actually add a directional light, and that's going to make this pop. And then we're going to just simply reset this so it's pointing directly down. I think that'll be all right. Then if we go back into the red brick here, maybe now we'll make this a little bit darker. Oops. Let's see if we can find a little bit more here how we like it. I think that's a little bit better. So that actually looks like it has a little bit of color to it. You can play around with this. You know, you can change, make it more metallic if you want, the smoothness. All of these things change the game, or change how it looks. So you can go ahead and play with that and make it look however you'd like. And then the last thing that we want to do is make this a prefab. So down in here, we're going to create a new folder as well, and we'll call this prefabs. And then to make a prefab, all you have to do is drag it down into the folder and it'll turn blue like this. So now this is a prefab. So if we, oops, that's not what I meant to do. If in here we go ahead and we duplicate this, it's going to be the exact same one. However, if we move this, if we move this over here, there's now two of them, and they're identical. But if we go into the prefab here, and if we double click onto it, it'll take us into the prefab. So we're changing the prefab. But if we wanted to change this from red to green, for example, and we save this and we go back out, now it's going to change both of them instead of only changing one. So if you have a whole bunch of an object, you definitely want to make them into prefabs to make those changes a lot easier. I'll go ahead and make the rest of these bricks now, and I'll probably speed up the video at this point. I think I'm going to make 3 different colors, maybe 2 rows of each color. And yeah, we'll just go from there. All right, so I got all of the bricks made for myself here. Unfortunately, I realized that the recording didn't work properly, so I do apologize for that. However, all I did was I simply duplicated the red color across the board, and I evenly spaced them all out. So I have them all spaced on the x-axis by 2, and then I have them all spaced on the y-axis by 0.3. So all I did was I duplicated the red ones across the line, and then I selected them all in the hierarchy over here, and then duplicated them and moved that group down, and then I moved on to the next color, created them, and so on. One thing that I do want to do is there's a lot of them over here, so I want to go ahead and kind of clean this up a little bit. So I'm going to create an empty object here. I will reset the transform to 0, 0, 0. And then I'll go ahead and call this one red bricks. And I'm going to move all of the red bricks into here. And so if we come through and we control click and get all of the red ones, move them all down in there. And then I want to do the same thing for the other colors as well. So we'll create an empty green bricks. Select all of the green ones. And move them into that empty object. And lastly, we will create another empty for the purple ones. And we'll select all of them and move them into there. That'll make that cleaned up a little bit here. And that will complete this challenge. So the next challenge here is to enable the ball to bounce off of the bricks, and when the ball bounces, we need the bricks to disappear. Breaking the brick should also add to the player's score, and the ball speed should increase as bricks are broken. So I think we've done a couple of these things in the last video, so this shouldn't be too difficult. All right, so back in the editor here, what we'll need to do, first thing that we need to do is we need to enable the balls to bounce off of the bricks. So if we click on play and we take a look at our game here, you'll see that the ball simply passes through all of the bricks. So what we'll do is we'll jump into the prefabs. So we'll just start with the green one here, and all we'll need to do is add a collider, similar to the other objects. So if we add a box collider 2D to the green one, we will add a box collider 2D to the purple one, and we'll also need to add a box collider to the red one as well. Now if we jump back and if we play the game here, the ball should hit the purple. Perfect. We're not going to make it past the purple right now, but it's hitting them. The next thing that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to destroy the bricks as we hit them with the balls. And we can do that pretty easily here. So we'll go into the scripts folder and we'll create a new script. We're going to call this destroy ball, or destroy brick, I mean. We'll go ahead and open that up. And then this one's going to be pretty simple. So we'll simply add a on collision, enter 2D, and all we're going to do is type in destroy and game object. So this should destroy this game object as we hit it. We'll go ahead and save that. And back in the editor here, we're going to go ahead and go into our prefabs folder. We'll open up the prefab, or we'll just start with one of the bricks, and we're going to want to add the destroy brick to this prefab. We'll want to add it to the purple prefab and to the red prefab. And now if we play the game, these should get destroyed here as we hit them. So far, so good. Go ahead, there we go. So if we, as you can see, it's hitting them and it's destroying them as they get hit. The next item that we need to do here is we need to add to the player's score whenever we break one of the bricks. So I think we're going to go ahead and have like the purple's worth 1 point, the green worth, I don't know, 2 points, and then the red worth 3. So we'll go ahead, and what we'll need to do first is add a new script. We're going to add and we'll call this one score. We'll go ahead and open that up. And before we forget, we're going to want to add this score script to the ball. And we're going to also want to go back into our prefabs here. And what we're going to want to do is set a tag for these. So if we go into the green brick one here, currently it's untagged. What if we add a tag and click this little plus symbol? We can type in, green ball. Save that. And then once it's saved, we're going to want to come back in here and select green ball. And we'll want to do that for all of them. So we'll do the same thing here for purple. We'll add a tag, call this one purple ball, save. And we'll also, while we're in here, add the red ball tag. And then now if we go back into our prefabs and our purple one, we'll change this to purple, and then red. We will change this to red. Now, if we come back out here into our hierarchy and we select one of the red bricks, this is going to be tagged as red. You'll see that they're all tagged. And we'll do the same thing with green. These are going to be tagged with green ball, and purple as well. So once we have everything tagged there, we can come back into our score script, and we're going to do again the on collision enter 2D. And we're also going to need to get a reference for the scores. So we'll do a private int, and we'll simply call it player score. And we'll also set this to 0 right away. And then the next thing that we're going to need to do is we will simply type in player score plus plus. This is basically saying that player score is equal to player score plus 1. So it'll add 1 to the score. And the next thing we'll do is we'll do a debug.log here, and we'll simply print out the player score just to make sure that it is working. So if we go ahead and save this and hop back into our game, now when we click play, if we go to the console, it'll go to 1 when we break the first one, second one, and so on. So so this is not quite right. This is giving us points every time we do something. That's not what we want to do. Every time we hit something, that's not quite what we want to do. So back in here, what we actually need to do is we need to write an if statement. So we're going to say if the collision dot game object dot tag, and we're going to say if that equals purple ball, then we're going to set the player score to plus equals the purple score. And then we'll say else if the collision dot game object dot tag, and this time we're going to say is equal to green ball, then we're going to set the player score plus equals green score. And then the last one here, we'll do another else if, and we're going to say collision tag equals, this one will be the red ball. We're going to need to add another equal sign up here as well. Looks like I forgot one. Then we're going to say player score plus equals red score. We can go ahead and we can remove this line here. We don't need that anymore. And then we'll leave the debug here to print out the player score. But if we go ahead and we save that and we hop back into the editor, now if we click play, we'll see here that it is counting. It's no longer counting when we're hitting other objects, and when we hit the green one there, it went up by 2. When we're hitting the purples, it's going up by 1, and the red one's going up by 3. So the score seems to be working properly here, which is good. So our next goal here is that the ball's speed should increase as bricks are broken. So this is something that should be fairly easy to implement based on things we've already learned here. So back here in our scripts, first off, I actually want to change. I noticed that last time I was playing here that the player movement's kind of slow. So I think we're going to go ahead and adjust this. And instead of updating directly here, I'm actually going to create a variable. So we're going to create a private float, and we'll call it speed. And we're actually going to set this to, I don't know, we'll go with 8F for now. And then we're going to change these to negative speed and positive speed. And that should make our player move a little bit better. So back in the editor, we're gonna test that out here. And if we play our game and try to move, our paddle is moving quite a bit quicker now, which I think feels a lot better. So we'll go ahead and we'll leave it here. Now we'll want to make our way over to the ball movement script here, and we'll make a couple of changes in here. So what we're going to do here is actually pretty simple. If we go into the score script that we wrote earlier, we have this if statement here already comparing the game object, the tag to a purple ball, green ball, and red ball. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take the first one here and copy it. And then over here in the ball movement, what we'll want to do is we'll paste that. And then if we collide with a purple ball, we also want to say or, and then we'll copy this, or we collide with a green ball or a red ball. So then we'll change these to red and green. Then we'll want to set this, set the speed to something else. So we're going to go ahead and say that speed is now going to be equal to the speed and plus a specific number. We'll probably want to make it kind of small. We'll go with 0.5 for now. I think this is going to be too fast, but we'll go with that to test it out. And now it should increase the speed by 0.5 every time that we collide with one of these 3 bricks. And then also down here, I don't think we need this anymore. I think we can simply say speed here. This math F is giving us the greater of the 2 numbers, and originally I was thinking about using this to compare different speeds, but I think we will simply use what we got here and we can replace this with speed. And then one other thing that I just noticed here is that I said ball for all of these instead of brick. So I'm actually going to go back into the editor and fix this so it makes more sense. So back in the editor here, if I select one of these, I have these tags all set to ball instead of brick for some reason. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to add some new ones, and we'll do green brick, purple brick, and red brick. And then we're actually going to delete. Okay, it won't let us delete them yet, so we'll go ahead and select the red ones. We're going to change this to red brick. Same with the green. Change these to green brick. And then lastly, the purple here. I want to do the same thing, just so this actually makes more sense. Then I'm going to go back into the tags here. I'm going to delete these ball ones because we don't need them. And then we'll go ahead, save that, and jump back into our scripts. And in here, we're going to have to change where it says ball to brick for all of these. And also over here, we want to do the same thing. And make sure we save those scripts. And I believe that's the only spot we use those. So we should be good now to give it a try. And we'll see here if this ball gets a little faster. You can see that it's starting to speed up. I do think the 0.5, like I said, is too fast. I don't think we want it to speed up that fast. It's going to be very difficult to actually beat the game. So we'll go back, and I think we'll make that to maybe 0.2 for now, and then we'll change this a little bit later, maybe if we feel like we need to. All right, so the next goal here is that we need to display the score and a life counter, and then the player is going to start with 3 lives, and if the player misses the ball, a life should be subtracted, and then once all of the lives are used up, then the game should end. So there's a couple of things in here that we've already done previously in the last game, but then there's a couple of new things as well that we haven't done, so we'll go ahead and jump right into that. All right, so back in the editor here, TextMesh Pro is already installed on mine for some reason. I don't know if this is something that's changed. However, when I went to add the text for the TextMesh Pro, I noticed that it's not actually like appearing here, and also the font asset is missing. There is no font assets here. So what I believe we have to do is down here in TextMesh Pro in the package resources, we have to actually import these. So if we double click this one here, the essential resources, this is where our fonts are. We'll go ahead and import that. And then here, we'll go ahead and delete these and recreate them here just to make sure everything is working. So now if we create a Text Mesh Pro text, we can actually see the text. So I just wanted to point that out in case anybody had the same issues that I'm having. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into the process of creating all of this stuff. So the first thing here that I want to do is I want to change my canvas to my game screen. So right here we can do screen space camera, and I can drag the camera that we're using here. So that's going to go ahead and make the canvas only the same size as the game screen, as you can see there. So that's good. And then next, the text here, we're gonna want to go ahead and move this. So we'll probably put it up here. Let's look at that in the game. I think that'll be good, and we'll change this obviously to score text, and then we'll simply say score, and we'll save that off for now. So back here in our score script, we already have created. We're going to do a couple of things here at the top. We're going to need to get a reference to the score. So we'll go ahead and make this a serialized field. And this is going to be a TMP underscore text. And we can call it score TMP. So this is the Text Mesh Pro for the score that we're going to be using. And then down here, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So we don't need this debug.log. So we'll get rid of that. And then also this, I think I'm going to refactor this a little bit. So if you highlight it and click Control period, we can extract the method. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I think we'll call this one get score. And then that's going to create it down here. And so now after we get the score, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to print this score. So what we'll do here is we're going to call this score TMP. And then we're going to say .set text. And we're going to set this one to score, how we had it, and then plus player score dot, and we're going to need to make this to string. Oops, I don't know why I typed this in here, but we don't need that. So now this should print the score here. We'll go ahead and save this, and then back in our game, we're going to need to get the reference. So here in the score text, or here in the ball, actually, we have the score script. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to add this score text to the score TMP here. And now if we click play, the score should be displayed up here as it goes up. And it looks like we ran into an issue. So looking at this, for some reason, we were getting this null reference exception error, and for some odd reason, I added two scripts here. So if we simply go ahead and remove the one here, I think we'll be good. We'll want to make sure and do that while we're not playing the game. However, if we remove that and save that, that should clear up the error message. Perfect. So now the score is going to start counting up, which is great. So while I was trying to figure this out, I moved this down here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back to where we had it before. And we'll go ahead and test that just to make sure that it still is working. So if we play here, this should increase the score every time we hit one of these bricks, which is working. We'll go ahead and break through the purple ones as well, just to make sure that it's working on green. it looks like it is working here, so that's great. And we'll just double check for red as well. Perfect. So now that we have the score working properly, the next thing that we're gonna want to do here is add the lives. So I believe what we're gonna do is we're gonna have 3 little hearts over here in the top right corner, and as the player dies, they'll lose a heart. So to do that, we need to find an image, and I found this one here is a free pack, this 2D pixel item asset pack by Startled Pixels. So I'm gonna end up using this little red heart here. There's a bunch of different other items in here as well. If you wanted to use one of these little potions or something, or different colored hearts, definitely do however you want. Or if you have your own images, feel free to use those as well. But what you'll want to do is when you find it, you're gonna want to add it to your assets, and you'll need to accept the agreement. And you can add this a couple of ways. You can either go to your assets and add it right through the asset store, or you can simply click this open in Unity. Otherwise, back in Unity, you can also go through window and the package manager and add it. I'm simply going to click open in Unity here as it's easier, and open Unity editor, and it's going to take us right to this pack. So we'll go ahead and click download and then import. And now I only want a specific one, so I'm going to uncheck everything, and I'm only going to check the one that I want, and the one that I wanted was the heavy outline for the red heart, and I'm going to import that. Now you can see we have this asset here. So now under the canvas, what we'll do is we will right click and we'll go to UI, and we're going to do a raw image. And then now on the raw image, we're going to grab this heart and drag it in there. And now we'll have the heart. So back in the scene view here, we can scale this down a little bit, however we want. Let's make sure these are good numbers, like 50-50 maybe. We'll go ahead and we'll move this over here to see the size and check that out in the game, and I think that looks pretty good. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to duplicate this heart. So we'll do Control D, and we'll do Control D one more time here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit and move these to make them look kind of nice. I think that looks all right. Yeah, I think that looks good. Maybe we'll move, move this one a little bit this way. But I think that's pretty good. So then now I'm going to rename these as well. I'm going to want them to fall off. So this one should fall off first, then the middle one, and then this one should be the last one to fall off. So I'm going to rename this one here, I don't know, heart 3. And then this one we'll do heart 2. And heart 1. All right, perfect. So then now in here, we're going to want to go ahead and we'll create a new script. And we'll call this one health. And go ahead and open that up. Now with the script open here, we're going to need a couple of things. We're going to do some serialized fields. And these are going to be game object. And the first one is going to be, we'll do heart 1. And then we want heart 2 and heart 3 as well. We'll go ahead and we'll save those and then jump back into the game. And so now we will go ahead and we're going to create an empty here, and we're going to call it health manager. And we're going to reset that position to 0. We're going to add the health onto that object here. And then we're going to assign the hearts. So we're going to assign heart 1 to heart 1, heart 2 to heart 2, and heart 3 to heart 3. Now the next thing we're going to want to do back in the script here is we're going to need a reference for the player's health. So we'll go ahead and we will create an int here called health. And then in start, we're going to set health. So we'll go ahead and we'll set that by default to 3, as we have 3 hearts. And then in update here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a switch statement instead of an if statement. So we're going to do switch and for health. So how we do this here is we're going to have 3 cases. So case 3, if health equals 3, what do we want to do? What we want is we want heart. Oops. We're going to want all of these. So heart 1, set active, heart 2, oops, set active, and heart 3, set active. And we don't need these breaks yet. And we want to set all these to true. So when we have 3, we're going to have all of these set up as true. And then we'll do the break here. And then the next one is we're going to want to do case for 2. So when we have 2 of them, we'll go ahead and copy these, paste them. And if there's only 2, then back in the game here, how we set this up, this one is heart 3. So we want to make this one not active, and then these 2 would remain. So back in the script here, we want heart 3 to be active, would be set to false. And then here, we're going to want to do case 1. And we're going to do the same thing. But if only one of them, then 2 is also going to be false. And then we have case 0. So if we have 0 hearts, these are all going to be set to false. So we'll go ahead and we'll save that. Okay, so now we also need to find a way to lower the health when the ball runs into the bottom platform in our game. So there's probably going to be better ways to do this. This is just what I was able to come up with here. And hopefully, you know, as I continue down these making these games, I come up with better ways. But what I was able to come up with for now is using the on collision enter 2D. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to get a reference here. And we've done this before, but we're going to get a string reference, and we'll call this, you know, the wall, for example. And this is going to equal the collision.gameObject name. So we're going to get the name of the object, and then we're simply going to say if the wall is equal to, and I believe we called this bottom wall, then what will we do? Then health is going to be equal to negative equal health. So that should take 1 away every time we collide with the bottom wall. So we'll go ahead and we'll save this. And then back in the editor here, we're going to have to also add the health script to the ball. And then let's make sure that we actually do heart 1, heart 2, and heart 3. And then if we click play, it's not working. Okay, so looking into the issue here, I noticed a couple of things. So the first thing is this health minus equals health. this is not what I intended to do. This is going to actually go from health 3 to health 0 instantly when we hit this, which isn't what we want. So what we want to do is actually set health equal to the health -1. So we'll take 1 away every time, and we'll go ahead and save that. And then back in the editor here, we're actually gonna need to, since we have everything on the ball, we're gonna also, it seems to be messing it up. So we're gonna go ahead and actually delete this health manager and save the game. And now if we click play, we should end up losing hearts every time that we hit the bottom here. So every time the ball basically goes off of the screen, we're going to lose a point. And then you'll notice once all the hearts are gone, the game does still continue to go and it doesn't actually stop. So that's what we'll work on next here. Now that we got the hearts working, the next thing that we're going to want to do is make it so the game ends once all the hearts leave, and we'll also just have a little button pop up that the player can click on to reset. So here in the canvas, we'll go ahead and we'll add a UI and we'll add a button right here in the middle of the screen. I think is good. And then perfect. So over here next we will change the text, and we're going to simply change this to reset. And then by default we're going to want this button turned off, so I'm going to go ahead and select it and have it turned off for now. And back in the health script here, we're going to actually want to get a reference to the button, so we can go ahead and we'll create another serialized field. And this one is going to be of type button, and we'll call it reset button. We'll go ahead and save the script and hop back into our game. And then back on the ball here, now we have an option for the button, so we'll click and drag the button onto here. And then back in the script, for case 0, so once we have 0 hearts, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set the reset button, set active, reset button dot game object, and then set active. And we're going to want to set this one to true. And then we'll go ahead and we'll save that. And at the same time, we're also going to want to set the time dot time scale. And we did this in the last game as well. We're going to set this to 0. And then we'll go ahead and save this. And now if we jump back into the editor and test this out, we should see that once we get down to 0 hearts here, this pauses. Perfect. Now clicking the button isn't going to do anything yet, but we'll go ahead and set that up now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to right click and create an empty. We'll call this one the UI. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new script, and we'll call it menu. And so then we'll go ahead and open that up, and we can remove everything that's in here. And all we're going to do is we're going to create a public method here called reload level. And in here, what we're going to have to do is we're going to want to also get a reference to the reset button. So we'll come up here and we'll create another serialized field, and this will be a type button. And this is going to be, we'll call it again reset button. And so then now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do reset button dot game object, set active. We're going to want to set this to false because we're going to reload the level. So we want to remove the button. And then we're going to need to do scene manager dot load scene. And we're going to be loading the first scene here, which is going to be 0. And then we're going to want to start the game as well. So time.timescale. And this one is going to equal 1 this time. So we'll go ahead, we will save that script, jump back into the editor here. And then we're going to attach the menu script to the UI, attach the reset button to the menu script here. And then on the button, if we come down here to on click, we can go ahead and click the little plus symbol here. And then the object is going to be the button. Or sorry, the object is actually going to be the UI here. And then we'll grab the function from the script. We're going to grab reload level. And now if we save this and test it out, this should allow us to reload the level when we click the button. So we'll go ahead and we'll die 3 times. And now if we click reset, it should start the game over. Which it does, however, nothing appears to be working. So we'll go ahead and we'll look into that a little bit. Okay, so after looking around a little bit here, I realized what I did wrong. Back in the health script here, what we need to do is actually need to set the health back to 3, and we're going to need to do this in case 0 down here. Currently this is once we hit 0, we're simply staying here. That's why the reset button is always being true and the timescale is being set to 0, as it's not we're not moving off of this case. So down here we're going to go ahead and we're going to set this back. So we're going to say health. We can simply say health equals 3. We're going to go ahead and set it back there. And one other thing that I noticed here was the movement of the ball. So I don't like that the ball automatically moves right away without us like clicking or something. So here in update on the ball movement script, we're going to simply do an if input, and then we're going to do get mouse button down 0, like it popped up default here. So if somebody clicks on the left mouse button, then we're going to take this add force and we're going to move it down here. And now somebody's going to have to actually click before the ball starts moving. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll test this out. And if we click play, we'll see that the mouse or the ball should stay still until we click the mouse button and then it starts moving. However, one thing that we will run into here is you'll see the mouse or the ball is going. However, when it comes back up here, I'll show you. Oh, it ran out. If the ball is coming up and we click again, you see that it applies that direction every time we click. That's definitely not something that we want to happen. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. Back in the ball movement script, what we can do is we can go ahead and set a bool. And we can say something like can click. And then in start, we'll go ahead and say can click equals true. So right away they'll be able to click. And then down here in update, we're going to do if can click. And then inside we'll move this if statement. So if we can click, then we can do this. And down here we'll say once we do click, then we're going to set can click equal to false. So we should only be able to click once. So we'll go ahead and save that and test that out again. So now in here, if we click, that's great, it's working. However, if we click again, it doesn't continue to change directions like we saw before. And then also, once we lose our lives, the reset button does come up. And if we click reset, it does reset the game. And then now we can click and we can start all over again. So up to this point, all of the goals have been met. And now we're going to go ahead and start working on these stretch goals. So the first goal here, the first stretch goal, is to save the high score between the play sessions and then display it alongside the player's score. So we'll jump back into the editor here, and we're going to do something similar to how we have scores set up over here. So on the canvas, we're going to right click. We're going to create a new UI and a new text mesh pro, and we'll call this one high score. And then we'll jump back into the scene here and kind of adjust this. So for the text, we're going to say high score for the default text. And we'll go ahead and we'll put this up here in towards the middle someplace. And if we check that out in the game, I think that'll be all right. Our score is not going to be too big here. So the first thing that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to make another serialized field for our high score. So we'll go ahead and call this one high score, TMP. So down here, we're going to want to go ahead and create a new method. We can create this as a private void, and we can call this something like get high score. And in here, we're going to have to write an if statement. So we're going to say something like if, and then we'll do something here. So if something happens, then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get set the player pref. So we're going to say player prefs dot set, and we're going to be using an integer. So set int. And then we can go ahead and we'll name this. So we're going to name it high score. And then over here, we're going to want to set a default value. And we're going to go ahead and keep that at 0. And we're going to want to set this as the new high score if the player score is greater than the player prefs dot get int. So when we get the int, when we get it, if player score is higher than this, then we're going to set it to the new value. And again, we're going to set this as a default of 0 here. And now we're going to need to call get high score. So we can go ahead and do an update. And in here, we can do get high score. We can save this. And also if we do a debug.log to make sure that it's working, we should be able to print off the player prefs dot get int and then high score. So now if we save that and jump back into our script or the editor, so back in the editor here, we're going to have to go into the ball object and drag the high score into the score script here. And now if we test this, in the console, we should see the score's going to be set at 0 here. But once we start, I was expecting this to move up, but it looks like it's not switching from 0. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, so over here, I messed up in the get high score. I set this to 0 when this should actually be set to player score, not 0. So we want this to set the high score player pref to the player score if it is higher than the current high score or 0 to start with. So if we go ahead and save this and hop back into the editor, if we play this time, this should go ahead and update down here. So we should go from 0, and then once we start, the next one will be 1, and then it should go up to 2. So that part seems like it's working. It is increasing the high score. And now we're going to go ahead and get that to display properly up here. So down here in our get high score script, we can also add the reference that we had created at the beginning here to the high score text mesh pro, and then we can do a dot set text. And we're going to call this one, we're going to set the player pref dot get int, and then again we're going to do the high score, and here the default value is going to be the 0, and we're going to do dot toString. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump back into the game here and give this a go. So now we already had a score of 2, but if we score a couple times here, once we hit 3, okay, so it is now setting that. However, it's not setting it properly. I forgot to add the high score part here. So back here we can do the set text, and then inside the parentheses here, we'll go ahead and do high score with a space, and then we can say plus the player pref. So that should fix that issue. So back in the editor here, we'll go ahead and play one more time and check this out. And so once we beat a high score of 7, since we had already gotten a little bit of a score here, otherwise it should have updated right away at 0, but so now this one, this should change, and it does change. However, you can see that this isn't formatted well, so we'll have to fix that. And also, I want the high score to be displayed right away. Currently it doesn't display until we actually pass the high score. So we'll fix the spacing here first. So we'll jump back into the scene view here, and we'll go ahead and make this quite a bit bigger. So we don't run out of any room. So that should take care of that issue. And then now to make the high score display right away at the beginning, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll do a start, and here we can basically copy this, and all we're gonna do is we're gonna set this right away. And what we're gonna do here is in start, right before we set this, we're also gonna actually clear these. So you can do player prefs dot delete all, and this is going to delete all of them, so be careful doing that, and you'll need the parentheses as well here. But for us it's perfectly fine, so we're just going to delete them so we don't have to go all the way back up to our previous high score while we're testing this out here. So back in the editor, we'll go ahead and we'll click play, and now this should say high score 0 when we start. Perfect. And then as we score points, it's going to increase. All right, and one thing, so I want to go ahead and remove this debug.log, and instead of doing this in update here, I think that I'm actually going to do it here while we're getting the score. So we'll simply call this every time, and this should have the same effect. So we'll go ahead and try this again. So we're going to start off at 0, and then it's going to increase the score. So we're at 2, 3, that's perfect. That seems like it's working good. And since the score seems like it's working good now, we'll go ahead and we'll remove this so it's not deleting it every time. And that way, while we play and get a higher score, it'll actually start saving. So the last thing that we're going to do here is we're going to grab the paddle and make it narrower once the ball reaches the top of the ceiling here. So back in our editor, the first thing we'll need to do is we're going to need to go ahead and create a new script, and we can call this one player size. And now once we got the script open here, we're going to go ahead and we can delete everything in here. And then we're gonna first start off with getting a reference to our player. So we'll do a game object and we'll call it player. Then we'll need to initialize that. So we'll do that in the inAwake method. And we'll do the player. And this is going to equal our game object. And we'll do find. And in parentheses here, we're going to type in player, since that's what we called it in our project. Next, we're going to need an on collision. So on collision, enter. And we'll do 2D again. And then we're going to need to get a reference for the wall. So we can do this string wall. And we've done this before. And we'll simply do collision.gameObject.name. And then we're going to go ahead and say if the wall equals, and this time we want to get top wall. Then we're going to want to do the player, and we're going to want to change our transform dot local scale. And then we're going to set that equal to a new vector3. And then we're going to need to decide what we want it set to. So currently, if we come back here and look at our player, it's set to 2.5, 0.2, and 1. We're going to want to leave the 0.2 and the 1 alone. So we're only going to want to change the 2.5 here on the X. So if we go back in here and if we adjust this a little bit, we can see how much smaller we want it. So maybe we'll just go with 1. I think that'll be the easiest thing. So we'll do 1.2 and 1. So back in the script, we're going to go ahead and do that. So we'll do 1f, 0.2f, and 1f. And we need to do a new here in front of vector3. So we'll have a new vector3, and then we can go ahead and save that. Now back in the editor here, we're going to go into the ball and we're going to add that script. Since the ball is going to be the one that is hitting the wall, the top wall. And to make it easier to test, I'm actually going to go ahead and turn off the bricks for a minute here. So I'm simply going to click on the group of bricks here and disable them. And then we'll go ahead and we'll play the game. Now what we're hoping to see is when we hit the top wall here, this should shrink in half. And it does. So that's perfect. Looks like that is working. All right, so overall, I think that we've done pretty much everything that we need to do in this game. There are some things that we can make better. We could change the ball spawn. For example, we could change if the ball goes down, how it continues up like that, and make it actually spawn in the middle or something like that. And then there's also an issue here where you can go like out of bounds. So there's some things that we could change or make better. However, for the challenge here, I think that we've completed what we needed to do. We've learned a good amount of things. And I think that at this point, I'm ready to move on to the next game. So see you there. And thank you for watching.